Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with an example of beautiful, perfect, karmic FU to your previous employer. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Boss decides to redefine my role, gets more than he bargained for. Many years ago now, I was the lone IT guy for a small transportation company, big enough to have several servers and multiple locations, but not so big as to require multiple people to manage things. The guy before me had a habit of breaking things in the middle of the day so that he'd have something to fix and then could tout himself as a big hero when things came back up. See, what would you do without me kind of stuff. Anyway, he decided to move on and I was chosen to replace him. Go me! Now, there were some things legitimately wrong with the environment that were causing some instability, but nothing that couldn't be fixed to eliminate any recurring outages. It took me a few weeks to right the ship and get things running along pretty smoothly to the point where I could stop focusing on fixing issues and start looking at improvements, new projects, learning more about the applications in use, etc. My daily workload reduced immensely, but I always try to make good use of my time. In 2008, the downturn in the economy hit the transportation industry pretty hard. Less purchasing means less production means less shipping. The higher gas prices didn't do anything to help either. The owner called everybody director level and above into a before-hour staff meeting to discuss the impact to the business and how everyone was going to have to take a 5% pay cut. Given the realities facing the industry and the company, everybody was more or less on board, myself included. Could be worse, I told myself. After the meeting, he came up to my office to let me know that my position was being reduced to part-time without benefits, effective in 3 days, the following Monday. Thanks for bringing me in early and having me sit through the rest of that, boss man. This happened to coincide with my then-fiancé and myself planning our wedding. This is before the ACA, and she happens to have a pre-existing condition that really required a work-provided healthcare plan. She was still on her father's insurance and had been planning on switching to mine since she was working a couple of part-time jobs at the time. So this news hit us both particularly hard. Unless they changed their mind or I found a new job in the middle of a recession, we would have to cancel the wedding. So I negotiated as high an hourly rate as I could manage and started using my off days to really beef up my resume and apply to as many positions as possible. As luck would have it, one of my fiancé's family members referred me to a local technology consulting company and got my foot in the door for an interview. They made me an offer and asked me to start as soon as possible. I told them I could start the following Monday, 3 days away. The look on my boss's face was priceless. To his credit, he got it, and we remain civil to this day. The icing on the cake was when he contracted with my new company to bring me back in at 3 times my previous rate while he found a replacement. And our second story. EM feels cheated out of her inheritance. Little backstory. I came from a highly dysfunctional family and tried to spend as much time away from them as possible. In 3rd grade, 9 and 10 years old, I met a set of twins that would become lifelong friends and their family a second to my own. At the head of their family was their grandfather. He was an extremely rough around the edges, no bull giving or taken, my way or the highway kind of guy, and the fact he was half Mexican and half Mescalero Apache didn't help. Every one of us boys at the house was scared to death of him, and no one wanted to go out of town with him to work. When I was 21, I ended up helping him on a job outside of Fort Worth, and during this time we bonded. I called him Pop, and he called me Son. Couple months after we started the Fort Worth job, Pop received a call that his aunt had passed away. We stayed up having a few drinks, and he told me stories about her until the rooster crowed. He described her to me in the same manner that us boys would describe him to others. Now, this woman would drink a 5th of bourbon and smoke 5 cigars every day till the day she died, but she made it to nearly 100 before she croaked. During the last 20 or so years of her life, the majority of her family had absolutely nothing to do with her, with the exception of one grandson. She had also amassed a nice little spread outside of Waco, having a 100-plus acre ranch, a large farmhouse, and a 7-figure bank account. Pop decided that we should attend the funeral. A few days later, we found ourselves in a small funeral parlor in the craptastic town of Waco. The funeral was going as all funerals go, with some people sobbing, others binge drinking, most of the kids looking bored AF, As Pop and I are sitting quietly, minding our own, we hear this increasingly louder conversation behind us. Enter the cast. EM, grandson's mom. EF 1, 2, and 3, entitled family, most likely the other daughters. Gigi, the good grandson. EF 1, really? Everything? What do you mean everything? EM, that's what the lawyer said. EF 2, she can't do this to us, can she? EF 3, there's gotta be something we can do about this. It's his fault she died. If he hadn't have provided her with whiskey and cigars all those years, she'd still be alive. EM, don't worry, he's my son and will do whatever I say. We'll sell everything and split it evenly between just the four of us. It was at this point Pops caught on to what was being discussed, as I'm sure everyone else around us had, and him being a man not to hold his tongue, lost it. It went something like this. Y'all need to shut y'all's butts. He loved to say that. This woman lived to be nearly 100 years old, and you're gonna try and say he killed her? Over what, money? If you cared so much about her, where were y'all the last 20 years of her life? He didn't do it for the money, he did it because it was his grandma, and it was the right thing to do. Before EM and EF could regain their composure, Gigi came up, looked his mom in the eye, and said, "Goodbye, Mom. This is the last time any of y'all will see me again," and simply walked out the door. The last I heard about any of it, Gigi was enjoying his life out on the ranch and refused to have any contact with his immediate family. I spent about another 6 months traveling with Pops, working construction and learning masonry. He passed about 7 or 8 years back. I miss that man. Even if no one reads this, it felt really nice to talk about Pop. Nothing worse than family haggling over an inheritance, regardless of the amount, when they've done little or nothing to care for the deceased during their last years. And our next story. Sell my son your land or I will call the police. Some backstory. My now passed on next door neighbor was a terrible busybody who felt it was her God-given right to tell everyone in our street what they could and couldn't do, from where they parked their cars to what flowers they could grow. She had to know everyone's business and would harass other people until she got answers, even going as far as stalking. But that's for other stories. If she didn't get her own way, she would spread the most evil gossip. Her adult children, a son and a daughter, were both greedy and deeply entitled, believing that because the majority of the street was either social housing or rented properties, they were better than everyone else, and if they didn't get what they wanted, then Mother would sort it out. I have many stories about this neighbor, far worse than this, but I'll start off with this one as it's the mildest she'd done and fits into the EP subreddit better. The son owns 2 other properties near the end of the street, which he rents out. At the very end of the same street is another house with a plot of land right next to it. The owners of that house and land built a garage that they use for work, rebuilding old cars and bikes. The business is at least 30 years old, handed down from father to son. It's very small, so they can only work on one vehicle at a time, but due to the owner's skills at restoration, they're always in high demand. One day, about 10 years ago, the son rocks up in his latest BMW and walks up to the owner, a father, and his teenage son. The rest of this conversation is paraphrased as I was not a witness, but this was told to my family by the owners themselves. S, son. O, owner, father. You know the drill. Son. Hey guys, it's your lucky day. I want to buy your land. I'll give you 15,000 pounds. Notice he didn't ask if it was for sale or offer to negotiate a fair price. Owner. No, sorry, the business is not for sale. Thanks for the interest, though. I wasn't asking for your business. You can set up somewhere else. I want this land. It's just the right size to build another house on. Well, sorry, no. This is our livelihood. We can't just move. We'd lose business while looking for someplace else. And besides, it used to be my father's garage, and it's next door to our home. So why would we want to sell it? So you can make money. Duh. But we make money working here, so sorry, but it's not for sale. The son then does what you would expect a grown man of 30, yes, 30 to do. He complained to his mother. His mother takes no time at all to walk back to the garage. Why won't you sell your garage to my son? He wants to build a house here. Because this is our place of business and we don't want to sell. You shouldn't even be working here. It's dangerous. I can assure you, ma'am, everything's up to code and we have every right to work here. Now please leave us alone. What are you hiding in there? Is it drugs? What? No, we're fixing up an old bike. I knew it. You're working here illegally. Sell your land to my son or I'll contact the authorities. The owner laughed and told her to go ahead. She stormed off and they thought it was over. Just the nutty ravings of a mad granny, right? An hour later, sure enough, the police arrive. Apparently, an anonymous caller rang them up to say that the owners had been dealing drugs out of the garage. It was obvious who'd called them. Of course, all the neighbors had seen the police arrive. Our street is normally quiet, and we're all nosy bastards, so when you see a blue light flashing, you step out and watch the show unfold. EM took great glee in telling everyone standing around and watching the chaos how the owners had been selling drugs to children and how she wasn't the only one who called them, but everyone knows what's going on, and thank goodness something's finally being done about it. Half the neighbors were shocked at this event, but a few of the longer-term residents were already giving her the side eye like it was a special offer at Tesco or Walmart. She must have been feeling pretty smug with herself, only there was a snag. Just a little one. Because the tiny garage worked on rare and old cars, which can be expensive, the owners had CCTV. That was something EM had not counted on. After the police had shown up, the owners knew who the culprit was and had no issue with showing footage, complete with sound to the officers, showing EM threatening to call the police if she didn't sell the land. With the half the neighbors out watching the events unfold, EM's face switched from smugness to fear as the police walked away from the garage and approached her instead. The officer then asked her if they could step inside her home to discuss something she probably didn't want her neighbors to hear. She received a warning regarding harassment and wasting police time. The owners of the garage were never bothered again, and the last remaining neighbors who didn't know how bad she was finally saw her for the witch she was. Sorry the ending wasn't epic, but that's just how it was. Ho-hum. And our last story. Ex yelled, had a temper tantrum about child support at his job, and blamed me in court for it. The next time I had to go to his work, he regretted it. My ex is an abusive pile of crap, and we had a kid together. I left him while I was pregnant, but I would take the baby to see him on his lunch hour occasionally. He paid $29 a month in child support for a very long time. I got it reviewed when he got that job, and it went to $89 a month. When he found out how much it went up, he threw a screaming temper tantrum in his work and chased me out of the building with our 9-month-old. We had family court a few days later, and he blamed me for everything. He even got his friend to lie and say he was there and I started it. The judge thankfully didn't believe him, but I was told to continue these terrible visits at his work. Now for the revenge. It was a furniture rental store, and he would constantly badmouth customers in very detailed ways. The next and last time I took our baby there, I sat down with a small notepad and wrote down the names he and the other person said, how many months they said they were behind, how much they said they owed, and every name he and his buddy called every single person. There were quite a few racial slurs said that day. When time was up, he had to leave, and I told his boss. The boss didn't do a damn thing. I knew 3 people he was bad-mouthing, and I knew how to get in touch with 5 or so others. I worked my way through that list, telling people exactly how their personal financial info was being released and the names they were being called. He and his buddy lost their jobs the next day, and the owner filed a restraining order against them. I didn't feel bad at all. A-hole deserves it. Good job. Hopefully things continue to improve for you. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.